Good.
Yeah.
Good evening. It's my turn to talk. Be quiet. Good evening and welcome to the Obelisk. Tonight's guest is Robert Powell. Robert is a traditional astrologer, hermeticist, geomancer, Greek philosopher, ISM priest, and magus. He's been podcasting since 2010, and he runs the Logos of Ophiel on, I can't read the rest of that damn thing. God damn you, YouTube. On YouTube. Oh, Jesus. He runs the Logos of Ophiel on YouTube. Robert, welcome to the show. I'm sorry for screwing up your intro.
It's perfectly okay because I kind of screwed up myself, so.
Yeah, there's like an extra word in there. That's what screwed me up.
Yeah, like I butcher it myself, so you have nothing to worry about. Like, there's people that can quote my videos better than me, and that's it's an amazing gift because I can't do it.
Well, we're certainly happy to have you back. You're a good friend of the show, and it's an interesting the way this lined up because all this astrology is going on, and you are an old school astrologer. So, what are you seeing with all this now? Also, what is the difference in the astrology you do from, say, tropical? Hello.
If I had to go into it, it's the interpretation. Like, you have things in. Now, I was actually looking at today's chart. It was kind of funny because you have the moon in rulership, and then I'm trying to remember here. I have to pull up my chart. I don't feel like looking at it right now, but it's like Libra is really feeling it today because you have the sun making Mars combust, and then you have Mercury retrograde in Libra, and I'm like, man, like poor Libra. Like that's a really bad state to be in right now. But but yeah, I do traditional astrology now. My main focus is electional, getting ready to go deeper into horary. But it's mainly like pre-1800 astrology. It focuses on primarily the 7 planets. You will find some Islamic influences in there that you won't find in a lot of modern Western astrology. Like, for example, the one thing that modern astrology doesn't have is combustion, meaning if a planet is within 8.5 degrees of the sun, that planet is extremely weakened. And then you have like these little nuances. You can include mansions in there. Like everybody has a ruling mansion that helps determine some things in their chart. There's via combustia, which the I would say the degrees kind of vary, like in between 15 degrees Libra to 15 degrees Scorpio, roughly, or different astrologers place it in different places, but it's generally in the tail of Scorpio, roughly. So there's some stuff going on there, and via combustia, as the Picatrix says, is just really bad time. So I guess you can say that you have a lot of these nuances, especially different things you would look in a chart. Like there's a point system in the chart. Like if a planet is dignified, it gets 5 points. If it's exalted, it gets 4, and etc. So those are some key differences. Like you have less objects to look at, which is a lot easier. So it makes the chart easier to read. But at the same time, you also have these other aspects that you learn to pick up as you go on. And like I said, my favorite thing is actually electional astrology, which is like picking a right time by the cosmos to do things. And going by the great chain of being, like that I think that's an awesome way to go. A horary is once again, I'm working on it, but electional I think is my favorite. And electional isn't like really popular in modern astrology so much anymore. Now it's like natal astrology, and then people look at transits and etc.
So, in your journey through the astrological realms, what is it that has you settled on this? And another question here, I'm just going to piggyback right on. You and I've talked in the past about the ancients and how they view the astrology and the stuff that's going on in the visible sky above, as you were just putting forward, and how things like eclipses are a very bad sign to the ancients and like in the Hellenistic uh, viewpoint and all that. What you got to say there?
When it comes down to this, there is a certain force, or I should say intelligences. And the primary difference with traditional astrology to modern astrology is traditional astrology is very spiritual, like we see intelligences and spirits. We don't try to devalue a lot of these things to just mere energy. We see them as living conscious things. Like Marsilio Ficino and other Neoplatonists, especially Plotinus, describes this very well, that it's not necessarily the planets that are influencing, but it's the world's soul, which the planets function in. And this kind of goes with the fixed stars as well, with the whole cosmos, is that although these stars are a great distance apart, that they are unified in the anima mundi, or the world's soul. So all the way from the throne of God all the way to earth, we have this kind of order that's already established. The music of the spheres that Pythagoras talks about. And it's very interesting because in a way, this explains not just reality, but the world in a way to where even the most chaotic situations are actually very orderly. Shakespeare writes about this. I forget the play, but it's in William E.M.W. Tilliard's Elizabethan World Picture. There's this king who dies, and rather than, yes, people were grieving over it, but they were looking for the cause, and he blamed Mars. So in a sense, although there was chaos and what we view as chaos, there's still order. And we could see it in the spheres. And there's something very special about that, especially once we like consider Olympic spirits or archangels and different hierarchies through the chain of being. And that's where astrology really comes important, especially in the Neoplatonic aspect in the chain of being, because it's the mediary between if God and the theological heavens and earth. And it's where the world soul begins to separate itself and start to disperse into what's known as rays. And these rays, they through the world soul manifest, and it all makes sense. Like, it's really deep, it's really philosophical. It's not just reading a chart. For a while when I started, I focused on modern astrology, but the issue that I came up with is how do the planets manifest? Like they're just balls in the sky. You know what I mean? And so I was asking why. So when I was looking at sources before 1800, and then I actually started exploring traditional astrology. By no means I'm an expert on this. I'm going to make that quite clear. But I am traditional in my astrology. And when I saw that, it explained why the planets had power. It explained this chain of being. And in shorthand, the chain of being goes from like the throne of God to the angels, to the fixed stars, to the planets, to the elements, to man, to beast, to plants to minerals, etc. So when we apply the astrology in there, it makes a lot of stuff make sense. And what really sold me on it was William Lilly. William Lilly predicted the Great Fires of London in 1666, 12 years prior, just as he also predicted the Great Plague, that happened 6 months afterwards too, 12 years prior in 1666. It was really William Lilly who sold me in on traditional astrology after I started seeing a lot of the weaknesses in modern astrology. And in modern astrology, I think, yes, we've discovered extra planets. But the issue is that I take with it is we've been studying these other 7 planets for thousands of years. Like every culture has a science behind them that's comprehensible, but we've only had these extra 3 planets and their intelligences for not very long. And most people derive the meaning from the names that materialist scientists gave them. Like a lot of these scientists aren't into spirituality. They aren't into the spirituality of the sky. They're materialists. So for example, Neptune, people automatically associate that with water. And so I don't think we can find really any true virtues based on the current system. So I think that traditional astrology holds steadfast in its position. The rules are pretty much set there, which is really good. And it explains the world even in its worst times, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does to me. I'm wondering, with the correspondence going on here, how do we work the animal kingdom into all this?
We do it via sympathies. Agrippa actually lays this out very well, and this is taken from Aristotle's work. Firstly, we have the chain of being, which is from 3 primary people, from Plato's Timaeus, and it's also from Aristotle in his works on animals and how he organized the animals in a natural kingdom. And then if you include the 9 orders of the angels and etc., it'd be pseudo-Dionysus. So what we have here, especially with animals and stuff, like if we look at the zodiac, scorpions used to be a problem. So you would expel scorpions using Scorpio, or you could predict cow disease by looking into Taurus and all of that. Or maybe something's going on with the fish, you would look in Pisces. And then you would also look into like the ruling animals in the planets as well. So when we look at animals in all of this, list of correspondences for various reasons, some of them, like for example, a cat can have multiple planetary rulerships. So it's all really about rules of sympathies. And I would recommend Marsilio Ficino for that, Cornelius Agrippa, and even Al-Biruni as well. They are great sources for a lot of these sympathies in the modern world that we're in, and also the natural world and the natural philosophy, such as stones and animals and everything. And those are all linked to the great chain of being. So when we read a grimoire from the Renaissance, for example, they actually use this. You know, sometimes they'll say, take a blood of this, take the blood of this animal, get this stone, get this herb, grind it together, etc. It's because, and you're supposed to do this at the right time because you're aligning like those specific ingredients in line with the astrology and in tune with the great chain of being. Does that make sense?
Yes, it certainly does. I'm wondering how, with all with that correspondence, how the ancients viewed all this as far as or through the lens of superstition, because I know that's at play.
Um, it can be. Like I said, sometimes like you'd have to make clear what you mean by superstition, like and
Well,
how it's
omens and portents and all this kind of stuff with auspicious movements and that they were viewing in the sky above. And I'd mentioned eclipses earlier, but certainly other events that were equally as rare.
yeah. Well, when it comes down to superstitions and things that these cultures used, once again, like when we look at different rulerships of different countries, they're ruled by different signs as well, which eventually trickle down to planets too. But yeah, they definitely play a part. I'm not an anthropologist or anything, but every place is a little different. It has its own environment, it has its own people, its own language, its own religions, and its own animals, etc. And yeah, it's kind of hard to, like, my focus is mainly Western, so I can't really diverse too far away from that. But what I can say is this: is that yes, those do play a major part to some extent, and 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 yeah, that's a boring answer, but it's a true answer.
So when we look at modern time superstitions around celestial events, what do you have in regards to all that, especially since you've been on such a long spiritual journey for ages that's taken you full circle? So you have a well-rounded idea of I think possibly what I may be getting at.
All right. Well, for our modern world, when we look at, and here's the thing with predicting events with modern astrology. So yeah, so, and let's just say it's a materialistic, energetic view most of the time. So with this in mind, when we're looking at events, it's interesting because with the interpretation and astrology, I mean, it's coming out with new rules all the time with it. And also people are mixing different kinds of astrology now. So I find that really, really interesting. Once again, it may not be a perfect answer, but applying just the energy model and all that, like I could see where people get their conclusions. I don't know how accurate they would be all the time, so I'm really careful on astrological sources. But I could see where they're coming from using the energy model and just looking at the planets as if they just contain those powers without looking deeper, without looking into the chain of being. But yeah, so when it comes to that, like I could see where people are coming from, but at the same time, with the way that this modern astrology is constructed, just strictly to be psychological, it makes it hard to predict events because psychology has pretty much overran astrology for the most part. Like it really has. Like that's what makes traditional astrology different, is because it focused less on the psychology and it's like what's going to happen. So for example, if we look at horror astrology, am I going to get robbed on my journey? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? Or what's going to, and fate was a big thing too, which is different because you would look in the eighth house to see if you was going to die or how you was going to die. So there, I think that the difference was that worldview, but I could see where people get that today. And I took a big step out of modern astrology because it was so over psychologized that it really took away the essence of what is astrology when we look through Western sources. And yeah, of course, this is it kind of builds up a system on itself with the psychology and with the whole energy model sort of combined. but at the same time, when I look at the traditional view, the modern astrology, in my opinion, just falls short of what astrology was and what it was meant to be.
So when we look at the astrology of the day right now, where there's a lot of big movements happening, uh, and with all the crazy going on in the world around us, do you see anything what do you see looking forward, say maybe through October, through Samhain?
Sorry about that. My phone was acting crazy. I haven't looked that far ahead yet. I have a habit of just looking through the day to see how it's going to go. But so far, the stars have been actually kind of rough. Like right now, both the sun and Mercury are in fall, and with the way they're aligned right now, right. And the good thing is there's a lot of trines going on right now, so it actually could be far worse. I just can't wait for the retrogrades to be over, to be honest. But once those retrogrades progress and become squares, then I'll think we have a real issue in our hands. For example, with the way Saturn has been placed, like Saturn is in rulership and it's retrograde. so so you have a bit of an issue there, especially with death, disease, and with um, Jupiter being in retrograde. You have loss of wealth. You have loss of authority. You have people in positions that are struggling as of right now, and it's going to be difficult because Jupiter takes around 1 year to move through one sign.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's going to be a rough one for a while, for a very long time. So even in astrological magic, like you really don't have a chance to do that many talismans throughout the year. So you're kind of looking for the best elections throughout the whole year to get them done. You may have sometimes 5, if you're 10, 20, who knows? It depends on the skies. But it's going to be rough for a while, especially when we look at where Saturn is and we look how the trajectory is going for a little bit. I haven't looked that far ahead because, like I said, I take it day by day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I'm not crazy with the astrology. I don't look. In fact, I've actually gone great periods of time without looking, and then I'll do like a sit down and kind of chart out several months to a year for the big points in my chart personally. But lately, I've been noticing, and I haven't popped in. I just know that several planets are having a retrograde, and I've got Robert Phoenix coming on another show to break that all down on Friday. But it seems par for the course right now that we would have some very unsettling astrological signatures going on, considering how tumultuous the outer world is at this time.
Oh, I agree. A few years ago, I'll never forget, Jupiter was well dignified. I think that was in 2018. Like Jupiter was just killing it during that year. But just like the cosmos, macrocosm, microcosm, everything has its cycles. And right now, I can't say we're in the worst cycle, but because you're never going to have perfect skies, but we just are in a great cycle right now. And I just, once again, boring answer, it's just kind of how things are. It is what it is. And that's how I started to take on my life. It is what it is, and I kind of like what Agrippa says. And Agrippa has this interesting quote in the 3 books of occult philosophies pertaining to this to some extent. He says that men are responsible for their actions, However, that's why it's important to look at the stars, because the stars do influence us. But when you know how the stars can influence us during the time, you are least likely to be prone to their influence. And that's kind of the point of Hermeticism too, or Hermetism, is to ascend through each of the planets and their vices, and eventually to get past them to actually get to the one or the monad. And I take that when I look at the astrology, it kind of prepares me for the day. So things are bad, but everything has its cycles.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think that's a good message for people to take in when we're looking at hard patches in the road. Is everything is cyclical, and there is, it's the great wheel. As it goes up, it goes down, and apparently, we're scratching the ground here. But I just wanted to get your take on all that from your specific point of view. Other than that, though, how are you, Robert?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. One thing that I've been taking in and finding is most important is just having an orderly life. Yeah, spontaneity is necessary at times, but you can't get much done without an orderly life. Doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want to, for example, advance in your job, or if you want to focus on your family, or even focus on your spirituality, focus on your religion, you really can't do that without a steady life. And yeah, if you're spontaneous all the time, and you're always out doing stuff, like literally living like that, like bouncing from place to place to place, idea to idea, without any sort of grounding, it's difficult. And over these past few years, I've been pretty steady. And life throws stuff at you. Like it's been hard to get privacy at all. Like I would say the past year and a half. So it's slowed down the content quite a bit. But after I kind of evicted people out of my life, like things have just been better, and I've been getting more done, and it's just been really, really good, and it feels refreshing to get back on my feet running, and to, I don't know, I just value my privacy a lot. It's that natural hermit.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal. Are you enjoying any pop culture stuff right now? Any shows that are running? Anything juicy in that front?
Yeah, one thing a lot of people don't know about me is I have this weird like dualism. Like, uh, even though I'm not Catholic, I like to watch EWTN for the mass. Even if it's Novus Ordo, I still think it's beautiful. But then the next minute, you'll see me going on Netflix and turning on horror films. Like I'm obsessed with horror films, uh, and I'm surprised because in the '90s there were some okay horror films. I'm watching this vampire show right now called Van Helsing, about this woman who can turn vampires back to regular people, and it's so damn cool. It has a cool story, a cool plot line. Um, yeah, horror films and shows have just always been my thing. Like that, not just during Halloween, for so most of the time, that's what I like to watch. I imagine that I freak out my neighbors because they hear a woman screaming on the television.
You should check out the new Netflix show called Midnight Mass.
I saw that. I finished all the way through.
Oh,
That
okay.
was
Write that
a
down.
trippy film. Yeah, that was really trippy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it was trippy.
it combines, your whole Catholic Mass thing with the whole vampire thing.
Yeah, that priest is pretty demented. I don't know how far people are into it. That is one messed up priest. Like the whole ending. I don't want to say what they were, but yeah. Netflix has been my thing lately. I'm surprised with how good like the horror movies are compared to what they've been in the 90s. Like writing for horror has gotten better. I can't explain it.
Yeah, it's not bad. Did you see the Squid Game
No,
on
I haven't
Netflix?
seen that yet.
Yeah, check that out. It's dark, but it's interesting, and it's I would consider it horror.
Give us a breakdown on that, Jer.
So it's an eight-part series, I think. Netflix series. It's Korean. It's dubbed. There's also the Korean with subtitles. This guy who's a total loser and not a scam artist per se, but he's still living with his mom. He's in his 40s. He owes money all over town, kind of like Bunny Lebowski. And it was a joke.
Dude.
Oh, it's a tough crowd tonight.
Dude.
Tough crowd. No respect.
I was just listening so intently.
So I don't want to ruin it, but I'm going to spoil it a tiny bit. He owes money to he's a gambler, degenerate gambler. He owes money to some bookies. Blah blah blah. He comes into some money and he loses. He gets pickpocketed and loses it. And he's just down on his luck, and he's in the subway, and some guy approaches him and offers for him to play, come play this game, and you can win a lot of money. So, and he gets this card with a triangle, a circle, and a square on it, and a phone number on the back. Then the guy gives him that card, and the guy takes off. He calls a number, and they say, be at this place at this time. And they pick him up in a van with these other people, and then the van gasses them and puts them to sleep.
Ooh.
And they all wake up, these people plus there were 456 people in this giant dorm room. And where these guys come in with masks, no one knows who they are, whatever, and explains to them that they're going to play 6 games. And every time someone's eliminated, the prize pool goes up by 100 million won, which is a Korean dollar. And the final, whoever lasts through all the 6 games wins 45.6 billion won, which is approximately $36 million or $38 million. And so that's the setup for it. They play the first game, and this is all in the first episode. And the first game all the games are kids' games throughout the whole show. So the first game they play is red light, green light. And
Wow,
I'm excited about it already.
That sounds good, actually. Keep going.
So they walk out into this courtyard. And they're all in these jumpsuits. Everyone's in the same clothes, but they have a different number. And the main character, his name is He-gun. I forget his name. It was a Korean name. He's 450. He's the last entrant. He's 456. So they play red light, green light. They go out there. They explain the rules twice. And there's this giant girl, like a girl doll, but it's 50 feet tall. And the head's looking at them. And they're all facing this thing. And there's a line in front of this where you have to reach this line to win, right? So the head turns around and it says green light, and people start run. Oh, sorry. The rules for the game were when we say green light, you can move. When it says red light, you can't move or you're eliminated. So green light, people start running forward, and the head turns back around and says red light, and people stop. And there was one guy who didn't stop quite right at that point, and he gets shot dead.
I've seen these commercials now. I
Yeah.
thought it sounded familiar. It looks really good.
It's really dark. But then
I'm
people
glad
start
to know the name of it now.
people start tripping, they're freaking out, they scream, and they're running back towards the door, and they all get shot. Because they were moving. Yeah, they were moving. It was still a red light. So that's basically the setup. I think they lose 250 people on the first game.
Oh my God. And
Yeah.
so is it overdubbed at all, or is it just subtitled?
Yeah, it's dubbed.
Oh, cool.
It's dubbed pretty well, too.
I've got that and Midnight Mass on my list here, you guys.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's this other film called Truth or Dare. I'm not talking about the one that was released in big theaters, but there was a smaller indie film also called Truth or Dare. And I forget this actress that was in there. She's a blonde. Her name is, I think, Cameron. But it's the basic premise, Truth or Dare. But people end up dying and getting stabbed and shit. Like, I'm sorry, that's interesting. It's stupid because I don't see why anyone would participate in a game like that unless, there's certain pressures, but it's still entertaining, although it's stupid. Like, horror movies would suck if the characters were actually really smart.
Yeah, well, there wouldn't be much of a horror. I mean, a lot of it is exposing human insecurities through poor choices. It's a good psychological study, in my opinion. On this, Jared, go on.
So that's okay. The actress is Lucy Hale.
The blonde?
I believe so. 2018 film?
Robert?
I think so. There's a blonde girl. She's a scream queen.
Hey.
This was the only blonde I saw.
Yeah, her name is Cameron something. I forget what it was. Like, I was excited. I forget her name. I feel terrible because she followed me and said hi on Twitter, and she ended up like directing all these movies and stuff. But
I bet you were excited. I know you love a blonde.
Oh yeah, you can't beat it. Oh man, like
Lucy Hale.
No, it's not. It's not her. Let me Google this.
While you all are figuring that out, JJ got me on too.
Violet Bean is her name. Her character's name was Marky Cameron.
I love Violet.
Is that what you said? Cameron was her name?
I'm gonna double check here. You got me Googling this now.
Do it.
So while you all are doing that, JJ got me hooked on a show. Of course, it doesn't take much if Adrian Brody's in it. I have had a hot crush on him from day one. Yeah, Chapel-White is so good. Now, I do have a couple grievances with some of the period stuff in there because I'm terrible like that, and there's some very poor oversights in that. Like, there's a scene with dolls, and they have a scene that's supposed to be set in like the 1780s or 90s, and those are very specific dolls from that period, and they didn't have one from that period, and they went and I could forgive that, but they went so far as to have a 1920s boudoir doll, which I love them, but they, it was so off, and I was like, oh my God, seriously. Little details like that will drive me crazy. However, and the house itself is not from, the house is a high Gothic Victorian, mid 1800s, and they push it back that it's goes back older than that. I can forgive all that because Adrian and the girl from 12 Monkeys that played Jennifer Goines, I love her. And the acting is superior. The plot line is really good. It's about vampires, and it's pretty damn juicy. So I'm enjoying it.
What show is it?
Chapel-White.
Oh, it's got vampires in it?
It is a vampire situation, actually. Mm. And it's juicy, and I think it's an ongoing series. So I'm on episode 6. I think it's up to episode 8 is up out, I think.
Well, that whole Victorian thing, it's interesting because the whole Victorian look, people, especially when you watch The Witcher, like there's some Victorian aspects to his vest and stuff. And I do like the Victorian aesthetic, but they do make it seem older than what it really is.
You can't, if you're going to be period, I think you need to commit to the period and not, this is what was so wrong with that Salem show. It was so I couldn't get through it because
the witch one?
Yeah, they
God, it was horrible.
Oh, it was terrible, but it was terrible because they were mixing too many periods of time. And so they'd have all the appropriate stuff with all the background people and the proper housing and stuff. And then the main characters would be in like high Victorian, 1880s, even Victorian, like late Victorian garb. And I couldn't forgive it. I could not forgive it. It was one terrible detail after another. And so if you're going to.
That's what happens when you write woke shit.
Well, I'll take it if they put Jack the Ripper in there. It matches the time, you know.
Yeah, but they'll probably make it, you know, a transgender person or something.
Oh my God! Well, that on that, where they did the Merlin series, and Merlin, I couldn't, you know, this is a hot topic because this is a Saxony, this is a Pictish, this is a white people narrative. And I'm sorry, it's just the truth. There was no black Merlin, and it's if it comes out and it's trying to be serious about historical accuracy, I expect that. If it's coming out and it's being whimsical or it's messing with historical accuracy, then okay, this one really tried to be serious, and the acting was really good. These actors were beautiful, but Merlin is not historically a POC, and it was kind of bothersome. And so you have people now, you know, that believe that narrative, and it's going to further muddy the waters historically. I had the same problem with like Liz Taylor playing Cleopatra. As much as I love her, she looks nothing like what an Egyptian woman of that period would look like. That would have been better served with Dorothy Dandridge or someone like that. So those are issues for me, and I really try to get off my high horse with that, but it does bother me. And then we see how murky it gets with historical stuff when people start, you know, that is an appropriate. How's that not an appropriation? And when there's plenty of great POC, amazing queens and kings and pharaohs and stuff out there in the world, and that's why I brought up Liz Taylor as playing Cleopatra. So this is a form of appropriation, and it's okay on that one. It's okay if POCs are doing it, but if whites are doing it, it's not okay. And I'm not trying to go into a race thing. I'm just talking about historical accuracy when you're presenting historical accurate shit.
Oh yeah, I feel you on that. Like I said, I only take movies and films half-heartedly on when it comes to historical accuracy. I gave up on that a long time ago.
That's what I'm saying, Robert. I wish I could loosen myself. I can, because with Chapel White, there are a lot of small discrepancies that I'm just like, okay, overall, this is really fabulous. I love it. We're looking kind of Salem's Lottie here, and it's juicy. It's just juicy. But like the one I mentioned earlier, not Merlin, but the one Jerry also agreed was terrible. The Salem one, you know, that was just unforgivable. I couldn't even get through it.
Oh, I feel you. Oh, by the way, I'm not dismissing it. I apologize. I found it. Jessica Cameron. They released an earlier film in 2013 that's really good.
Oh, Jessica, I know who she is. Yeah.
Yeah, Jessica Cameron. She made Truth or Dare. Like she makes really good films, and I like her version of Truth or Dare.
It's funny because Madonna had that documentary from her tour, Truth or Dare, and that's the very first thing I thought of. I'm like, what's this?
Yeah.
Was that really popular album of hers?
Well, which one, Jerry? She had 10 popular albums.
Oh man, she had one that I just fucking loved. I listened to it nonstop.
Sing us a song here, child.
yeah, sing it.
Use your best.
I'm trying to remember one of the songs on it. Something Candy, something girl. Candy, Sunshine Girl. I remember the
That
name.
I think that was on the Frozen album, wasn't it?
Frozen, like the
Electric Candy Girl or something. I know which one you're talking about. That's the one with that was like out in 1999 or
yes,
something. Mm-hmm.
Madonna albums.
Oh, Ray of Light. That's Ray of
Ray
Light.
of Light,
album.
Ray of Light. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a fantastic album.
That's
was like,
a great album. Yeah, that's a really great album. Frozen's a good album. She was really good in that period of time. I think that was her best period.
yeah.
Oh, from the 80s to the 90s. Yeah, I could see that.
Well, she's not even Madonna anymore. It's so hard to look at her. I'm like,
I don't know what. She's some kind of beast.
She has turned into a crazy beast. It is unbelievable.
I know. My friend showed me a picture, like, and they expected me to know who it was, and I just saw these clips and stuff. I'm like, who is that? They said that's Madonna, and they swore it looked like her, but I'm like, no, that don't look like her.
No, Madonna. If you look at a picture of Madonna when she had a square jawline, because she no longer has that jawline, and her eyes were different, like she is not the same Madonna. To me, when you see candid shots of her now, not the airbrushed and all the Instagram filters, she looks like Joan Rivers.
Oh, it's like the Goo Goo Dolls singer. He doesn't look the same at all. Like you could tell, he's went under the knife to try to look younger. And
it is freaky, isn't it? There's something kind of circusy about it, though, and in that way,
clown like Candy Perfume Girl is the name of the song. Hello, where have you gone? What happened?
In there, but one of my favorite shows is actually a Merlin movie, not a series, but it's the
Excalibur.
No, the Sam Neill version from 1998. It's 3 hours long, and it's a little bit loose, but it still follows a lot of the historical Merlin myths. And Sam Neill out of Jurassic Park plays Merlin, and then there's some humor in there as well that's kind of modern.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
What movie is that?
Merlin from 1998. You can find it for free on YouTube.
TV show or a movie?
It's a movie. It's 3 hours long, but it's really good. It focuses on how the pagan ways are dying. And as they're dying, Queen Mab wants to save her religion. And apparently she's been neglecting her religion for a long time because people call out to her and she just didn't listen. But she creates Merlin. And this woman has Merlin and he has no mortal father. So eventually his mother, I won't spoil the whole thing. I'll just go over the basis. But his mother dies at birth and her caretaker raises Merlin. And she's kind of like that stern aunt that you have. You know what I mean? You love her to death, but she'll tell you like it is. So
don't fuck with her.
Yeah, she raises and she speaks up to Queen Mab in the beginning and everything. And it's a beautiful film because eventually Merlin, you'll find out in his heart, he doesn't like magic. He just wants to live a happy life.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting twist.
So go on.
No. I was gonna.
Yeah, but at the same time, you find he doesn't like Christianity either. So he's kind of nihilistic towards religion. And then once again, the mythologies are a little mixed up. You'll find that in every Arthurian, a movie. Like Nimue and the Lady of the Lake are separate when they were the same. But still, I can forgive that. But it's cool because it goes into his mythology. Although he was older in this film, he actually predicts why the tower is falling. Is because there's a cavern under the castle, like in the actual myth, and the land is cursed. But it's really cool because it follows the timeline of the original mythologies. But it's a beautiful movie. I like where he grabs the moon for his lover, and he's like, and it's like a 2D moon. He grabs it and he's twirling it around his fingers and stuff, and then he closes his hand and it goes back in the sky. It's just really cool. It's a good film. It's not dated at all either. Beautiful story.
Cool. I'll check that out. I was going to say that I rather enjoyed Stanley Tucci as Merlin in the Transformers movie.
Is that new, Jerry?
No.
Okay, because you lose me there. But I can't. When we talk Merlin, one of my favorite ever movies, it's in my top 100 list, is Excalibur. I don't think that's been topped personally.
Did you guys see the Guy Ritchie movie, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword?
Yes, I did.
I haven't seen that.
Merlin's in that. It's pretty good.
That's several years old now, isn't it, Jerry?
Yeah, it's like 5 years old.
Like a decade or something.
No, 4 or 5 years old.
4 or 5? Okay, yeah. Time and me.
It's got,
but I mean,
I forget the actor's name. Go ahead.
How can you not recognize Excalibur is greatness?
Yeah.
I know, right?
Oh, you know what else has some Arthurian stuff in it is the Hellboy reboot.
I haven't seen that, and it's a movie.
Oh, I didn't know that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
When was that out?
2019.
Oh shit.
It's not that good. I don't know. I liked it. David Harp. What's his name? David. I forget his name. I got the wrong webpage here. 2019 film. David Harbour, the guy from Stranger Things, the cop.
I love all things Stranger Things.
He plays Hellboy.
Is that in a place where I can find it?
Can be.
Oh, excellent. I love an Easter egg.
So Mila Jovovich plays Nimue.
Okay, I'm already in. If Mila's in there, I'm in.
And Ian McShane is Hellboy's dad.
Ooh, Ian.
Trevor Broom.
Mm-hmm.
The casting sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. It even has giants in it. So.
Oh, I'm in. That's going to get on the list. So we're in October here in just a couple days, and this is the season for the horror stuff. So are you looking forward to anything that may be coming out, Robert?
There's always 2 things in October that I enjoy. One is my birthday, and the other is Halloween. Like Halloween has always been my favorite holiday by default.
Yeah,
the air is just different.
Like I love Easter and Halloween. Those are my 2.
Yes, fall. The only thing that sucks about Halloween here where I live is because every time, all but last year, like over the past 10 years, it snowed on Halloween, and it kind of pissed me off. So, I like
that
Halloween.
Does kind of take the witchiness out of it. You get more Yule with the snow.
I know, right? So it's interesting because when it comes to Halloween, I don't know, just the vibe is different. The colors, you get those autumn colors. Didn't you get that one time to where actually horror films and like fear, you have a healthy fear in a holiday. It's kind of like Krampus and
Yule,
and Yule. And what's even more fascinating is that in October, I don't know how to describe the air. I would describe it like the Celts, like you could tell that the veil is just thinner, and it's hard to describe. So what I do is like I do a small ancestral rite, to give thanks for my ancestors that I'm here, and then I have a beer, and then I go out and get candy, and it's
I'm coming on over. I want candy.
Yeah, candy does sound pretty good. Oh, chocolate bars.
I want candy.
Yes.
I know a boy who's tough but sweet.
October, though, is a special, special time. I love October. It's my favorite month, my favorite time of year. It's not too hot, not too cold. It's just right.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Well, and this particular October is more interesting than ever because of all the darkness going on.
It is. I think that I've always had a very dark sense of humor, and that's been both a positive and negative for me in the light in my YouTube videos, because I really like, I like morbid jokes, and it's just kind of how I am. Because it's kind of a way to deal with the stress of the world when we look at the darkness in it, and when we joke about it, it's kind of an acceptance of it. And October, especially Halloween, it kind of encompasses that in a really strange way. It helps us channel those that side of us that we have to hide all year round, unless you're a weirdo and you just don't hide it at all, all year round. And I take part in that. I admit I'm a weirdo.
That's right.
I watch horror movies all year round. I'm not afraid of dark humor or any of that, and I like it. Like there's just that feeling, and in the air. Once again, the whole thing is just different. It's a stillness in a way. I wouldn't say it's exciting, but I also wouldn't say it's calmed. But there's a stillness, a spirituality to it, a time to kind of just accept things.
Do your dreams change at all when we get into this season?
I wouldn't say that. I've always had weird dreams and very vivid, lifelike dreams. We talked a little bit about that on Nox Mente a while back.
Well, that was forever ago. That's years.
Yeah. Well, that still hasn't changed one bit. Like I don't know if I talked about this on Nox Mente or not, but I'll never forget. I swear to God, this was real. I can swear this wasn't a dream. I didn't believe in other dimensions, that there were other different people that were you in dimensions, until there was this time. I'll never forget. I still have memories. It's like I lived a full life. I could tell you everything. I had different parents. I can actually argue my life was better. And it's like it had its ups and downs and etc. And then it's like that dream, it ended. And if you want to call it a dream, but it's like I woke up and I still had memories of that other life. It was freaky, like really freaky. And then it's like a state of shock in a way. And then you realize, oh, and then it's like the memories here in this other dimension start to take place and fade back in. Like, it was weird. That was one of the strangest experiences that I've ever had.
How old were you again for that?
It wasn't long ago, maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that.
Oh, so probably around the time you were on Nox Mente.
Yeah, probably. It was really weird. Like, you know how, like, you could tell when a dream is a dream. But when you can recall memories and talk about your childhood, when you can talk about your favorite foods, your friends, how well you did in school and all that, like a totally different life. Like, I think there's something deeper to it.
I'm kind of switching here a little bit, but because you do a lot of paranormal work in the field, is this a busy season for you?
Yeah, this is generally a busy season, but to be square about everything, the paranormal isn't as busy as a lot of professionals make it out to be. They just kind of overhype it. But I do help out people all year round. It's about the same, I would say. People, they get the occasional poltergeist or elemental, in their house or something. And mainly I just find it's like elemental spirits or noisy spirits most of the time. There's been a few cases to where it's been demonic, but not very often. But I wouldn't say that it's as busy as any other time, because the paranormal is around all year round. It's a lot more popularized. Understand that people may take it a little more serious during this time of year. But at least for me, and my buddy David, he's a paranormal investigator too. This is his busy season, but not much busier. So it kind of varies. It's about the same for me.
So when you encounter, so first of all, how do you know when something is actually a demon?
First of all, there's
everything is
Jerry's
demons. Come on.
I wish, like, that would make life so much more thrilling, wouldn't it? Like, you would never have a boring day. COVID, demon.
You're onto something right there.
Like, you lost your temper, demon. Your life sucks, demon. I wish life would be so much more exotic. But how you could tell it's a demon is first of all, we have to make a few categories here. And every paranormal investigator has their different categories. The Warrens had 10 categories, but I would say mine, I wouldn't go that far. Most of the time, there's just a poltergeist. Poltergeist generally it just means noisy spirit. It's noisy, it'll move things, it'll do things. Like the majority of the time, that's what I get. And a lot of times it's just what I would call the Fae. If you really want me to get down to the spiritual terms, the Fae. And I don't think a lot of people that are secular magical practitioners or in the occult understand what the Fae is. Like, when we think of Fae or fairy, we think of Tinkerbell a lot of times, but the Fae,
not.
yeah, they're multi-varied. And
if
even
Amanda's out there, she could school us.
Yeah, and you have different versions of these elementals in Germany and Austria. I forget what it's called. My friend told me about it. But there's this little house gnome that like steals your shit. Like, okay, I got to be honest here. And Mike, if he's going to listen to this, he can vouch for me. The weirdest thing happened. Like, with the little people, they like to steal shit. They like to move things. They like to make noises. Now, demons, for the most part, they can mimic human voices. They start to isolate people. They're a lot more malevolent in this way. But it's funny when we look at elementals and all of this. Some people psychologize elementals, but when we look at the Fae as an example, I've had a few experiences, but I'll highlight two of them. It was when I got out of the Army, so it was probably 2009 or something like that. I go to pay my rent. Rent wasn't too bad, like $400 for me at the time. And I always had this weighted rock I would just use to put stuff on, this huge rock about the size of a fist, put on stuff. At the time, my wife left. The marriage was about to be annulled anyway. No one else was in the house. My landlord comes to get the rent. And I know I put the money there because I just put it there. And a minute later, they say, okay, I'm ready for the rent. I turned back in my house to grab the rent money. After a little conversation, the money's fucking gone. It's fucking gone. $400 gone.
Oh, man.
Disappeared. And that's not even the end of it. I hate the little people sometimes. Okay, that's an over-exaggeration. I just
the wee ones. You better watch out because they're going to hear you.
Oh, yeah. But they can be irritating. It was last year. I think it was in February. No, it was this year in February. I had a pretty decent phone. So I had it with me. I was carrying it with me. I went into my friends who owned this metaphysical shop here in town. And I swear, after I get done talking to them, And my roommate gets done walking in there separately because we kind of live our own lives. She walks into the shop, I walk out, I step out in my car, and my phone's not in my damn pocket. And I'm looking for my phone everywhere. And there's snow there, and I'm like,
Are you sure your ex-wife didn't, or your soon-to-be an old wife didn't contract with the wee folk?
No, she wasn't very smart.
Oh, that's probably why it didn't last. Sorry to derail.
Oh, man. This even gets this gets weird because I make it home, and Google Maps they'll trace where you go, right? And that scares some people. It don't bother me so much. Like if they want to know what groceries I'm buying, I don't give a shit. So and it helps if I do lose my phone, I'll be able to find my phone, right? So I go home on my Google Maps, and the last place that my phone was is where my car was. And I swear I checked that spot. I checked all around the block, and that was the last spot it was. I even showed that to the shop owner, Mike, and I'm like, dude, look at this. It says it was right here. This was the last recorded spot, and it's just gone. Nobody picked it up and walked away with it. That would have been traced. No one turned. So, and even then, the signal was on for a long time, and it wasn't there.
Yeah, that's classic. That's the classic we folks, for sure.
Yeah, it just disappeared. And my teacher, he always had this saying, and I love it. You'll find it in my Twitter header. No, in my description. And it's damn gnomes. He had the same problem. So now my Twitter header just says Magus, period. Damn gnomes. They're kind of like my scapegoat for everything now.
Oh, you better watch out for that, Robert.
Yeah, they're kind of my ongoing joke. I love them.
They're gonna get you in the night.
I even had this Greek talisman that was made into 40s. It was beautiful. And it said Thessaloniki, and it had all the bridges on it and everything. Beautiful, beautiful. I got it at the antique store. I swear to God, once again, this disappears. And I know exactly where I put it. Just gone.
So when I want to get back to demons, because everything's demons. When you encounter a demon, whatever the category is, how do you go about getting rid of a demon?
That's interesting. There's a lot of methods that I use. Obviously, holy water. I always carry holy water, at least in my home.
You too. I'm always packing with the holy water for real.
Yeah, I got like 2 Bibles. I have one I put in my car for the Psalms. Like the Psalms are really powerful, and there are certain verses, not just in the Psalms, but throughout the Bible that are just very useful. The Psalms are really powerful, though. God, if you open up my trunk, you'd think I was a fucking Winchester.
Ooh, let's talk sexy now.
Yeah, I seriously have iron ties in the back of my car because
and people don't know you have a hot rod too. You kind of have a Winchester vibe to you.
Yeah, I've been told that. I've been told that. It's weird. Like for years, I didn't even know what supernatural was. And then I would just kind of describe what I do. It's like, oh, like Dean. I'm like, who the fuck is Dean? Like, I'm just doing me. But it was weird. I didn't know. Like if you look in the back of my car, like I have a whole thing full of a blessed salt, holy water, iron, and all sorts of stuff. I keep my backpack in there. I have a crucifix. I mean, I got pretty much the whole shebang. I have my Roman Rite in there for exorcisms. And a lot of my spare stuff that I use. So when it comes
to depending on the demon, like let's talk about high order demon, like very difficult, intense, high, like more of a king or something, at least a prince or a duke, something high up.
Mm-hmm. Um, for something like that, there's a lot of strict rules there. For example, it's good to go to a holy place. It's good to have your stuff memorized. Just like for any exorcism, go to confession, have your sins forgiven by a priest. Because with the way that, like even when we read the New Testament, Christ passed his priesthood to his disciples. He literally says, "Go and forgive sins." You know what I mean? That's not metaphorical. And so he essentially did create his own priesthood.
Are we
And
able to come to you since you're a priest now?
yeah, I actually have people who do that.
Oh,
On a serious note, yeah.
oh,
So yeah,
sorry, Robert.
like people, they send me their different magical talismans and swords and wands, and they say, "Okay, you're a priest. Can you use the mass that's mentioned in Heptameron, to the mass of the Holy Ghost, to make my items holy?"
I'm talking
Yeah,
about confessions.
yeah, but with confessions, yeah, um, yeah, I can very much do that. But confessions are important because confessions are like a psychic link to demons in a way. Because demons, um, like for an actual possession, it's very, very rare, probably like 1 in a million. It's not very high to actually encounter one. Most of the time, if it is a demon, most of my experiences with demons, I haven't had very many, but they're very, very lower level demons, like more like infestations. And it's not hard to get rid of them for the most part in that way. But even then, as an exorcist, you can only do so much if the person doesn't want to do so much to change their life. So think of sin like garbage, and think of the demon like flies. Okay, so people will argue if sin is real or not real. I believe it's real. And most of the possessions and most of the spirits that I've seen that are negative with people come from their sins, come from their mishaps, come from their lack of regret, or come from a lifestyle choice that they've picked or a habit that they do, or etc. And they can't get rid of them. And this causes a lot of issues. And it's like, I can do this for you, I can get rid of this, but after you told me what's going on, this habit is always going to bring this and more. Like, we can put up wards, that's fine, but eventually the castle walls are going to fall again, and you essentially have to make the choice on your own. And that's what it's like most of the time. Sometimes it's just an infestation, but when you're dealing with higher level stuff, that's why I have like my ceremonial tools, like my wand, because the wand, the crucifix, especially the wand, it was used for thousands of years to call the power of the divine, and I would argue it's equally as powerful as the crucifix when we look through the historicity of it, the usage of it, and everything else. Nowadays, the wand is a meme, and people think of Harry Potter, but the wand is actually very, very useful with demons, with guiding divine energies, and to be honest, it's good for a lot of spiritual matters. With the little people, it's actually good when you're dealing with entities. So
When you're with this whole demon, oh, Jerry, go.
I have a question from the peanut gallery here. Someone wanted to know if you agree with Marzinski that schizophrenia is really possession by demons.
That's kind of a tricky question. I do think this. I do think that demons can actually, and spirits can prey on people with mental disorders. I really feel that way. But it doesn't mean that every mental disorder is a demon. Yeah. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I do
agree there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I do think that people with schizophrenia, in some cases, whether it's a self-created delusion, but I do think there are some cases to where spirits can mess with people with schizophrenia, like voices telling you to kill yourself and things like that, or telling to do terrible things to people. I would argue that could be demonic, and it could create a really confused mixture of stuff, whether it's self-created or a demon. So you'd have to decipher one from the other, and that'd be really hard.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
What about, so when it gets to the point where you need to do an exorcism, how do you know when you're at that point?
There's a few standard things that you need. First of all, mental health evaluation to look at. That's the very first thing. If a doctor really can't point out to anything that it could be, then that's a step forward in the process. And possession takes years and years and years. And let's kind of clear up what possession is. Possession is not necessarily where a demon takes literal possession over you. It's where you let it in, and at points it will take control over your actions, but there's still a lot of free will there. And most of the time, a possessed person, they can get out of it, but when you're under the grip of something so evil, it's really easy to spot sometimes. Especially when you look at some cases. Like some people, we have to decipher a few things here. Is that just the way this person has been their whole life? And that's actually a very convoluted question. Like one of the classical signs is obsession. They get obsessed with, especially the darker side of the occult. They get obsessed with the darker side of spirituality. And a lot of isolation is involved a lot of times, and the doctor says mentally they're good. So there's a whole list of signs and symptoms that you have to go through, but it's like and this is why I think the Vatican is wise to have a long checklist of things to look for, because it does get complex in this way. And that's why I say an actual possession isn't very high. So,
Well, one of the things that I've understood from looking through a lot of those files and talking to some exorcists, ex-ones that were excommunicated from the Vatican, is that point, and this is usually when we get like the horror movie stuff out of it, but there's a point when they call it the full integration, and that's and of course, as you're saying, it does take years to get there. It's a long process, and it's a long wearing down process, I gather. And but that full integration period seems very disturbing to me, looking at the details I've read. And of course it seems like it's very rare, but one of the things I've noticed is it seems like it's there's an uptick in that currently.
The Vatican has been saying, I don't trust the Vatican on a lot of things, but when it comes to possession,
who does?
but when it comes to like possessions and stuff, I actually I will listen, because, well, I mean, what do they have to lose by mentioning it, talking about that? You know what I mean? But when it comes, that's what they do. Is it has become more common, and another sign of possession is like when people can speak languages that they really don't know, and it's just kind of weird when you listen to them. But in our culture, yes, I agree. There has been a bit of a spike. I don't know if I'd call it all possession at this point, but maybe some oppression, which is totally different and I would describe it as kind of like where you listen to the spirit, where you keep committing the sin and keep committing these things to kind of let them in. And this is where I get really, really careful, because when I think about possession, when I think about oppression and all of this, let's look at our culture that we live in, right? We live in a culture that doesn't see black and white, and that's okay because there should be nuance. But however, when we place this on things like morality, good and bad, or like good and evil, or even this idea of purity, that nothing is pure, like pureness is kind of like this morality to a sense, with deeds and with actions, words, and deeds, and speech and all that. So when we really think about how society has evolved, it's become more materialistic. I mean, here's my view, and I don't think a lot of people are actually oppressed anymore or any of that, because and it can become common. However, I don't think demons have to work that hard anymore, especially when the vast majority are materialists, and they don't see the spiritual side, so therefore it's nonsense, or it's symbolic, and all of that. So the work is already 75% done. So why would they have to oppress a person, or why would they have to demonically possess most people? Especially with the worldview. If they can live through a symbol, if a person wants to believe that demons are just symbols, or just mental health, the demons, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to convince anybody of anything. The people are already convinced. Do you know what I mean? So
let's get into that for a minute, Robert. So there's always that talk, right, about people saying you have to believe in it for it to be real. But I understand that sentiment, and I think to 99% of the stuff that's out there, I think that's a big deal. I think that's a real deal that we create it. But I do think that there's a certain small percent of phenomena out there that is actually authentic to what we're talking about, that is real. These are external forces gaining control or entry through portals and in us, in like parasites. And so I'm speaking to the 1% there, but how much of this is you have to believe it for it to be true versus it's true no matter what?
It's a case by case thing. But if we're looking at the big picture, if we just want to say belief can manifest things purely, and this is where I'm going to disagree some. I do think that it can be fallacious. Like for example, if you know me, I'm terrible with analogies. So let's take a computer, right? When I look at a computer screen, and this is more for a Jerry, like when I'm just moving a mouse and I'm clicking through shit, but behind that computer there's 00110011. There's a code behind there, but I'm not comprehending that code because I'm just looking at the surface. Now, if I don't want to believe that code is there, even if I don't believe that code is there, it's still there. I think that there are some truths that are black and white. It's and just because we avoid a certain truth, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's and that's where I think that some topics, like such as the spiritual world, and this is once again where I agree with traditional astrology, is okay, planets have the power, but people don't ask why. So there's an underlying truth there that is not the planets themselves, but the intelligences of the planets through the world soul. And this is the same thing. Like for people who say that you can believe stuff and it's real, you can say that. However, there's just some topics to where we know that applies and doesn't apply. For example, there really is good and evil, I think. I don't think it's just a human construct, because, I mean, for example, it even goes, because this can go down to social dynamics, which, like we have a good idea of social order. Like we know it's bad to lie, we know it's bad to cheat, we know it's bad to steal, etc., because it's not good for the tribe and it causes discord. So I guess what I'm getting to is that I think to a certain extent, belief is really important, especially in magic. And you have to believe in something for it to work, because if we're talking about magic and spirituality, these entities, I don't think they're stupid. I don't think they're ignorant. And some of these magicians, especially some of these magicians coming out that are following more of the traditional path, like, for example, who don't believe in God, yet they're doing this whole prayer to God and calling this angel, and they're just reading it or memorizing it and saying it without the belief. The angel's going to be like, yo, man, you think I really want to come down and help you? You think I'm really that stupid? So I do think belief can have some effect in that context, but I think that there's a lot of context here, and we can go on for hours with the power that belief has and where it applies and where it doesn't apply, because I do think, like Plato, that there is a degree of truth here. And when we look at Plato, he's talking about an objective truth a lot of time, and he tries to reach that objective truth rather than a subjective truth, because a subjective truth can change, but an objective truth is always going to be there. And you use your subjectivity to try to understand the objective truth. And like I said, I don't think sometimes the human comprehension is infallible, but I do think that we do have good judgment, and sometimes we have a good idea of what's behind a veil, even if we put in our own human terms. So I think belief can go so far, but if I believe that it's Santa Claus putting presents under my tree, I can believe it's true, but it doesn't make it true. So objectively, he's not there. You know what I mean? So that's where a lot of context is.
So when you're expelling in an exorcism, how do you go about that? It always seems really intense to me. And I am talking about so once you've determined that that's what you're looking at, and say it's not, I don't know the degree of what stuff you've been around. So I'm going to assume that maybe not a full integrated one, maybe these ones in the process of what's your process of casting them out?
That's interesting. Once again, I have my trunk full of stuff, but I always carry my priestly supplies with me. That's the big thing. I always have a stole on me. Once again, the crucifix, and then actually, what I prefer most of the time is like the standard exorcisms with the normal prayers, like the liturgy of the saints and all that, because it does work. And mainly a whole set of prayers, holy water. And even what's interesting is even communion works against demons too. So, and it's a lot of prayer, a lot of hymns. And once again, it's the person is there while they're possessed, and in this whole process, they're the priest is there, but the most important part is the person. Like they have to know what brought that on, and they have to truly want that thing out. And even when they're tired, it takes a lot of willpower. But yeah, it's like a lot of prayers, hymns. You bring certain tools with you, and it's very interesting. Yeah, and it really all depends. But yeah, sorry, it's not as detailed.
Oh, no problem. I'd rather have the way you're speaking the truth. So with all this, also, can you clarify for people what kind of priest you are out there? So I think everyone's just immediately assuming you may be a Catholic priest.
No, I'm an ISM priest, an independent sacramental priest, or at least an offshoot of it. So there's apostolic succession going to both Peter and Thomas, and it's very interesting. I would say it's an offshoot of the ISM. I don't know, because it's not a part of it. I guess you can say it's a part of the one today in a sense, but it divorced the Catholic Church like way back in the High Victorian era, 1880s, something like that, and started its own independent thing. So this is around the time when Theosophy was around. So the sect that I come from matched me well because it has the metaphysics in it. It's more open-minded. They actually accept people, women priests too. I believe women can be priests, and I know a lot of people and a lot of Orthodox Christians. When I say Orthodox, I don't mean the Orthodox Christianity, but I mean like traditional Christians, especially Catholics, and even, I guess you could say, Orthodox Christians hate that because, and then the traditional movement too, because they say that Christ had nothing but males for his apostles. But at the same time, we had Paul, who has the apostle Unia, which is interesting. So, and Unia is a Greek name, and there's been arguments, no, that the Greek name, although it's feminine, it's an error, or it's a guy with the girl's name, or it's actually a guy's name. And that has caused and sparked a lot of scholarly debate. But back on topic, I have all these weird little side rants. But at heart, ISM is like a looser version of the Catholic Church, and you'll see that I don't want to call it a reform because it's definitely not a reform, but there are different branches of it.
So when we're looking at all this and where you are, are there churches, like buildings, how the Catholic Church in particular has its different types of buildings, basilicas and cathedrals, etc.?
I haven't personally encountered some due to my location, but I went online and saw that there were some. But that's as much as I can say on it. Yeah, I've seen some, but I don't think it's as common because it's a minority in Christianity, especially with priesthoods and all of this, and it gets pretty laughed at by both Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox, and other people. But I think it's extremely valid, especially for something, with a more open-minded view and taking a look at different things. Once again, I do think that it's valid, and a lot of people will go to the apostolic succession and say, okay, you don't carry this faith of this part of our religion with your priesthood, so therefore it's invalid. And that's where I disagree. So truth be said about the whole situation, yeah, there are churches, but you'd have to find them online. I just haven't personally went into one.
It's well, and Jesus was always talking about God's not in the church anyway. So, that's a big factor when we're looking at the religious experience versus religion.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting with the way Jesus kind of viewed the temple. Like, you can tell he saw it as a holy site to the Jews, obviously, but at the same time, it's just a weird observation. And once again, I don't want to spark any Bible debates or anything. There's so many different opinions. I don't want to say he was anti-temple, but I believe he was an Essene, and on top of that, an Essene priest. And he maybe got divorced or expelled from the order, because you never hear him talking crap about the Essenes. And the Essenes, they had pretty much like their own space that they went to and did communion. If you read through the Dead Sea Scrolls, they believe that they atone for the sins of Israel, and in their I can't even think right now, in their city or in their temple. So they didn't even use the Jerusalem temple, but we know Christ did have the authority to speak at the Jerusalem temple. So and he had to be close to 40 to even be called a rabbi. So it's interesting with how he treats the temple and talks about it's fallen in 3 days. And I'm not going to lie, even today, it seems like, and apart from Christianity, like temple worship for the Jews, like they seem to focus more on the temple than they do God. Like, and they want the temple back. Even Christians want the temple back, but it seems like some people focus more on the temple than God itself, or God himself, whatever. But it's rather interesting to me.
I think it's very telling, because that especially when I look at maybe the Gospel of Thomas and stuff, and looking at some of the stuff that I vibe with that comes from these other books, and I really, really like the Gospel of Thomas. The focus on the temple and on buildings and all this is, I mean, I can't reconcile this. This is like this is almost like anti. No, I get the differentiation that Jews have with Jesus as opposed to Christians, but I still can't get over the fact that it seems really surface level to be focusing on the temple rather than the God head, the bigger God. And that's what seems kind of strange to me. It seems like these big modern day Christian churches that are just like stadiums, and there's a certain look to a lot of modern day Christians, and there's a certain kind of cultish feeling that feels like it's not super deep for some reason. This is just my take. It's my take. And I feel like the experience one has in seeking God, whatever that is for them, however they want to call that, whatever they want to language that, has nothing to do with anything in the physical plane at all.
Oh yeah, I can see where that view comes from. Yeah, when it comes to the temple, it's really interesting because early Christians, and if you know anything about Judaism, it's really interesting once you learn about Judaism and Shabbat and the feasts and everything. Like, if you read, and what's older than all the Gospels are the epistles of Paul. Like, and it's nothing against the Gospel of Thomas, but that was written later. Like, the original 4 Gospels are older. You know what I mean? So they have a more sound theology for the historicity at the time. But what's older than the 4 Gospels are the 7 authentic epistles of Paul. And one thing I really enjoy about the 7 authentic epistles is because I think it offers a more clear picture of what Christianity was like. So if you want to know what my gospel is, it's the epistles of Paul. Like straight up. I would pick that over any other Christian work. But when we read his epistles, a church was pretty much at the house. And it was about the gathering of people in love. It didn't have to do anything with large, immaculate temples. It didn't have to do simply with, beautiful statues, although most Jews would object to statues and all of that. But I think it's really important that a church is about the gathering of people in love. And today, church is treated like entertainment. It's treated,
and a lot of pay to play with the church experience.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing, and I partially blame the tax system for that. And now I'm one of those people. I don't think churches should be taxed because not every church is a mega church. Like you have a lot of smaller churches actually doing work in the communities. You know what I mean? And I don't think that the smaller churches should be. I don't know. I don't think that the smaller churches should suffer from the greed of the bigger churches. Does that make sense? Because there's
yes.
smaller churches doing a wonderful job.
Oh yeah. I don't want to blanket any of this, and I definitely don't. And I know there are people having religious ecstasis all the time, and that you can have it anywhere. That's my point, though, is that this is a one-on-one experience with whatever it is you are deeming that architect energy, the Godhead, the pleroma, right? Is it the pleroma?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not Gnostic, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's the pleroma, and then there was like a schism in the perfect math, and then there's like born the false light God. And but anyway, I think that I love beauty and I love beautiful spaces, and I will always love the Catholic ways because I'm so inspired by how much beauty there is within I'm talking no religion here. I'm just talking beauty.
Yeah.
Beauty in architecture, beauty in textiles, beauty in layouts of mass. And, to me, it's all such a visceral experience, but I don't have bad experiences to lay out against that. So I get that. And if I were to have say I were some sort of a priestess of something and I wanted to have a really great temple, modeling after the Catholic model is awesome because you get a full environment. And I think that's important in a transcendental way. For me, it is. I like full immersion in an environment that can focus your will and everything into what that immersion is by coming into a space that is wholly focused and deeply immersed in the message.
Yeah, I can certainly see that, and the way it's evolved, like the images in churches, especially some of the art came from the fact that people couldn't read, but they can look at pictures and tell the gospel. And I think that's really important. However, as much as I love the aesthetic and the will and the focus, there's always a teaching from Christ that I always follow. And, that if we want to be godlike, we must love other people like we love Christ, We must be merciful to other people and love other people like we love God. And that's something that you won't find in a lot of churches. You won't find a lot of love, in my experience. I feel like there's a lot of judging. I feel like, especially in the Catholic Church, there's a lot of politics. I feel like that sometimes there's a political agenda. As much as I love even some of the older cathedrals, I find issue sometimes I question if they're politicizing the artwork that they have. Which I think they have done historically speaking. Like my personal experience is sometimes I'll run like a home temple or a home mass, and there may not be statues or anything, but just experiencing people one-on-one with full love, experiencing and having experienced that mass, and even outside of mass, and just being with them, getting to know them, getting to see what they like, what they don't like, what pisses them off, what doesn't, and getting to know the experiences, like that far exceeds any church experience. And that's what church is about. Church is about love and togetherness. Now, and that's something that an aesthetic, it can never replace. Like, for example, although this isn't necessarily a church example, with my teacher who died a few years ago, I still miss him till this day. His essence was pure, it was beautiful. He was a very wise man. And when I was a lost young man, even though he was closed off and I was closed off, we were very good friends. And when you open your heart and try to love someone, and they do the same thing to you, there's something there that you won't find anywhere else. And that's what original Christianity, especially during Paul's time, was about loving your neighbor and also loving your enemies, And yes, the aesthetics are good, but what's an aesthetic without love? Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I absolutely get that surface level, and I understand that. But when you've got a full immersion of something that encompasses aesthetic and as well as there's substance there, then that's a beautiful thing for me. I want to get a little clarity on St. Paul. Or Paul. You keep bringing him up, and he's come up a lot. I'm not going to say why, but he's come up a lot in my space in the last year. What makes him so special?
Oh, all sorts of stuff. I really love St. Paul. I love him because he's really unfiltered, really unhindered in a lot of ways, very passionate, very fiery, and which is why most people love him. But I love him for his nuance. Like, his nuance is absolutely beautiful. Actually, if you go through his 7 epistles, it's pretty much Judaism 101. Like, anybody who knows anything about Judaism, it's just rabbi commentary. That's really what it is. It's rabbi commentary. And if you read it like rabbi commentary, a lot of it starts to come together. I have 2 videos on my channel, Logos of Ophiel. We have, I think one of them is Paul the Mystic. And I'm on there with Judith, and Judith was a student of theology at one of the best theology schools you could find in Germany, in Leipzig. And
Judith is awesome. I'm going to have her on my show eventually. I've got to get to it.
She is so cool. She's so smart. And she really does a good job in studying like Pauline scholars. And she pointed out stuff that I never even thought about, like about Paul. Now, Paul, we also have to say, was a man of his time too. And once again, that is the New Testament is a 2,000-year-old book. Now, Paul, I really like him because let's take out Acts. Acts was not written by Paul. It was written by Luke. So let's just focus on his 7 authentic writings or epistles. He even said that he persecuted Christians in his own words. Actually, Paul is really important because he's proof that Christ walked the earth. Like all the Jesus mythicists, they can't debunk Paul, because even a scholar worth their salt who studied said, no, this Paul was a living guy, and he said he knew the apostles who walked with Yeshua. Like, that's a really big deal. Like, he has secondhand information to saying he knew the apostles who walked with Christ. That's his big thing, and that's why I think his 7 authentic writings are really important. And like, even during his time, the Trinity issue wasn't really an issue. It was just the Trinity wasn't really an issue until Origen pointed it out. But back to St. Paul. St. Paul is just really interesting because if you look at his mysticism or any of that, like, he literally says the angels are our weapons. Like, they can break down walls. And I find Paul so mystifying because the Christianity today is nowhere near the Christianity of his time, which I kind of find saddening to a sense, because in his 7 authentic writings, they are so important to understanding what the Christian life was. I read the 7 authentic writings sort of like a manual. It's like Plotinus's Enneads in his own words, and we have Paul's own words in 7 writings. And from a scholarship level, he's important. From a mysticism level, he's important. Like, he mentions the gifts of the Holy Spirit, which scholars today struggle with. Paul's church that he describes is something totally different than what the Catholic Church goes into, or the Orthodox Church, like in terms of the 7 gifts. Like, he never denied that the congregation could have gifts. Paul's a really deep, complex character. Like if you actually read in context, you'll find a grieving Jew who despises the law sometimes. Then you'll find a proud Jew, which makes sense because when I read his rabbinic commentary, it seems to me as a man suffering from trauma because he's getting attacked from like both Gentiles and Jews. And he's this really complex character. Like, people try to paint Paul as one thing or another, but you can't paint him with a broad stroke. You actually see a struggle, and I'm using rabbi, although rabbis weren't necessarily, the word at the time, but I use the word rabbi. We see a struggling rabbi dealing with his own inner issues as he confronts the world mixing with his issues and his Jewish teachings. Like, you'll find the Noahide laws, which are for Gentiles. For example, just obeying the government. Because he even writes that kings and tyrants hold the sword for a reason, for the sake of justice. And which is controversial to most people. But if you go to the Noahide laws in Judaism, for Gentiles, you'll clearly see where that's mentioned. So I think the Noahide laws go back even then, although they weren't called that, or maybe it was something else condensed down to the Noahide laws. But he was essentially, and rabbis will tell you this, he was making this Judaism accessible to everybody without any barriers for conversion, because Jews weren't against conversion at the time. And probably, oddly, the biggest issue of his time wasn't just a politics. It was, are you Jewish? Are you not Jewish? And it was circumcision. So a lot of people conflate his view on circumcision to other issues when he's just talking about circumcision. So when he's talking about works, he's specifically talking about cutting the foreskin of a penis. He's not talking about religious deeds. He's talking about cutting the foreskin of a penis. It's not symbolic. Literally cutting a foreskin.
And sucking the penis, the blood, or whatever they do.
Yeah, that's literally what he's talking about. So a lot of people
I find that very strange.
They don't read Paul in context, and that's what bothers me. And this is why I like Pauline scholars, is because they're like, Pauline scholars are like, yeah, y'all got it wrong here. if we take his time in this, he's talking about this. You know what I mean?
So just to wrap, because we're getting on that 2-hour mark, and we can keep this short, but I can't help but bring this up since we are here in this discussion. So there are a lot of people that are viewing this as some birthing pains to revelation and all that. What are your thoughts on that with how crazy the world is outside of us?
Could be, could it be? I don't know. But I have looked into Revelation. Actually, Revelation almost never made it in the Bible. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, the
So,
times are extraordinary. And I think everyone that's got eyes that see can agree that these are extraordinary times. This is a world event of
yeah.
strange things going on that we have not seen in our lifetimes, period, point blank. And so we've got to,
Yeah.
from weather to animal die-offs to strange geological stuff to wars and rumors of wars and signs in the sky and all that stuff. How do you see that? I mean, it looks very auspicious. Now, I know everyone always thinks it's a revelation in their generation, but if we look back historically, this kind of madness across the world seems to be kind of extra special right now.
Yeah, it is. But I stick with I don't know, because even Christ himself said we won't know the time or the hour. So that's a
But
first rule of thumb. And I try to, this is where I don't know if this is a gift or not, but I have this weird thing to where I can just disengage with something and just be distant for something and just say I don't know. It's really strange. And this is one of those topics. Like even then, I find revelation kind of sketchy within itself, because it seems to be like a rewriting of another Old Testament book with the end of times. You
well,
know.
so we can take Revelation out of the equation then and look at the craziness going on and say, so for me personally, and I'm not a Christian, but I actually really, really love I love old tomes. And so I'm really enjoying the Bible and all the other stuff from the Dead Sea Scrolls and all this. Uh, I can see clearly to me that something big is going down. And now, if you ask me psychically, I know something big's going down. I've been talking about it for quite a long time, and I've been doing play by plays as I see things happening.
Mhm.
But I'm not putting a biblical edge on it, except for I am giving a nod to some of the stuff I notice and I see that seems to play into Ragnarok and into the Christians
Mhm.
uh you know and so end times doesn't mean end of people, it means a reset to me. And then we're going through a revealing, which is coming into open rule, and whatever it is coming into open rule, and we're getting that revealing is coming down, and we're seeing what's what with that. So I actually acknowledge that this is a very auspicious time, and that it's been a long time since we've had an auspicious time like this.
Oh yeah, I can see that point of view. Um, when it comes to that, and I know my reaction will probably confuse viewers, but the truth is, this is probably just my army side. Is more practical, for something that's way above my pay grade. And and we have a saying when we're in the army, you know, hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And this is one of those things. I don't know how far I can go into it. Like, especially a part of my disposition coming from a Protestant family, and specifically Pentecostal, to where everything was turbulent times. And so maybe that kind of skews my point of view a little bit, because I've heard that my whole life and just
Yeah, but
saw
your whole life it wasn't like this. This is my point.
well,
This is my exact point. The Seventh-day Adventists are always every 7 days the world's ending. And so, and every generation's been talking, it was their time, and 100 years ago it was their time, and all this. But what I'm saying, and in my lifespan, I haven't seen this kind of crazy. And this is a new kind of crazy. This is everyone. This is involving all the people playing in the field right now. And so, unlike the Seventh-day Adventists that have been saying it forever, today is a different day. And same with the Pentecostals and all these people that have bought into death cults and all that. This is different, and I think we should acknowledge that without having to give any credence to others that are always saying the sky's falling. Right now, it appears that the sky's changing, if not falling.
yeah, and the last words in the Bible is, the end of an age, and which was mistranslated to in the King James to the end of the world, but because the word was ion, but in Greek. But at the end of the day, I see the changes. Once again, like I don't know, like maybe for us it's a thing, but I like the way everything else into stuff like the Spanish flu and the or TB, you know what I mean? Stuff that was going around, and I think that the modern world, and I've thought somewhat about this, like really what atrocities have we faced in the modern world? You know what I mean? In third world countries, like we haven't experienced a Mount Thera, that's making economies fall, like it took down the Egyptians. You know, um,
But see that you're using like
well,
singular examples, and I'm talking like everyone across the world right now is involved
yeah.
in this.
Well, yeah, and it's been like that before with Mount Thera. It made economies crash around the world. Some places didn't see, and I'm not trying to minimize what's going on, but I'm just saying that there's been parts to where this has happened in the past too, and even at worse levels. You know, um, plagues, natural disasters affecting everyone.
But
It's
those were
really
singular, is what I'm saying. A plague, yes, a plague was happening here and there, lots of those, and they would wipe out a lot of people in certain regions. But we are having major earth events, like major events all over the planet. We're having major die-offs. We have a whole world that is trying to lock its people down everywhere. Extreme. Look at Melbourne. Look at Canada. Look at your state where you are. And
Look at
and
New
then
York.
look at New York, Washington, Oregon, California. I mean, we could go on, and that's what I'm saying. It's a cumulative thing. It's a lot of stuff happening at once. It's not just a natural disaster that affected everyone. It's not just one plague that affected everyone. And it's not just an economic situation that affected everyone. Now we are compounding layer upon layer of this. And not to beat a dead horse with this, but it's that whole eighth sphere that Skinner talked about as well, which I've become more schooled on as we move deeper into this.
Oh yeah, I could see that, you know. But like I said, my view is just slightly different on it, because after Mount Thera came disease, tidal waves, and then some say it wasn't too long afterwards there was an earthquake that pretty much destroyed a good part of the Hittites at the time. And I kind of view this, and I agree that, you know, we're in terrible times. But once again, I guess there's that little voice in the back of my mind, like in the modern world, like what we suffered compared to the multiple things going on back then. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I
Oh,
take it.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
that's how I address it. Like this is our 1666 Black Plague, in London. Then came the fires, and then everything else comes out of that. And what happens when you don't have a sanitary city? Then you
Yeah,
come
but
into
it was just London, and that's my point.
Yeah.
It was these things have been localized, and there's there's all the woo that we can get into in the digital area and the AI and all this. All these events historically were pretty localized, except for when we start talking about the big events like the Noah event, and by water and like that. Then that is an event that affected allegedly the whole field, the whole earth field. So it's an interesting thing, but we are running late, and it's hard.
I had something I wanted to bring up before.
Come on with it, Daddy.
So, with all of this stuff that's going on, your time of Revelations, everything just made me think about Pluto return of the United States, which starts next year, which is only 3 months away.
I know it's the Pluto situation is a big deal.
So, I mean, it's all coming to a head, is the way I see it. And that's all
I'm with you, Jer, but that's exactly poignant, and that's my bigger point here is that when we look at the 1666 stuff, it was very localized. I mean, I know it was devastating, but we're looking at the whole world right now. This is not localized anywhere, and so it's a big event, and we're having big emanations of this too, and we're just going deeper in, and I guarantee when we get to February and we look back at this month, we're not just like last year. The world's not going to look the same, and we're not going to have the same experience in the world as we did the year prior to here, how we got here, because nothing's been the same. There's the new normal. What the hell is that? And back to normal, Jerry, back to the new normal
ain't happening.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying, Robert, and that's all I'm saying. But
I agree.
This has been a really juicy, fun evening with you because we talk demons. Jerry and I love that.
Love demons.
And pop culture and horror movies. Jerry,
I wanted to bring up one more thing. When we're talking about demons and exorcisms, there's a really good show on Netflix called Evil. It's a CBS drama, I think it's CBS.
Would you break that down a little? Because I keep seeing that and I've not clicked on it to check it out.
So the second season's almost over now, but the basics of the show is there's a woman who's a psychologist, I think she's a psychologist, is asked to consult with a local archdiocese on some demonic intervention to determine if it's schizophrenia or mental illness or actual demons. So she joins a team with a skeptic who happens to be Muslim, and a guy who's becoming a priest. So she and these two other guys go and do investigations of paranormal stuff to determine if it's actually demonic or not for the church.
Ooh, this sounds juicy.
It's like CSI meets Supernatural kind of thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
This sounds right up my alley. It sounds very juicy. Yeah. Robert, you're going to have to check that out too.
I will. Like, it's one of my dreams for like a director to say, hey, we need some occult information writing these shows so they're coherent in a real occultism. I'm like, okay, I'm on it.
Yeah, but the show's called Evil. I think it's on the second season was on the Paramount Network, but the first season, I believe, is on Netflix still. So you can catch it there. Otherwise, you're on your own.
I'm going to do that.
How do people find you in the world, Robert?
Pretty soon, just only through my YouTube channel. Logos of Ophiel. So that's pretty much about it. Because here, starting December 21st, like my only social media is just going to be my YouTube channel anyway. Because I'm just trying to live a more mundane life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I admire that. Well, it's been a great pleasure to have you on, and I loved it. I hope everyone else did. Jerry, it's always fun to get down in the dirt with you, Daddy.
But of course. And yeah, that show, the first season still is on Netflix.
I'm going to check that out tonight.
I'll Twitter you, I'll DM you a link.
Perfect.
Chat.
I would like that.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been really a pleasure. Very thoughtful, deep conversation, which was excellent. And thanks again, Robert. That has been great to have you on again. And thank you, everyone in the audience, or the listeners that are in chat. I'm lost. I'm sorry. Doing 3 things at once.
It's the Gatorade, Jerry.
It's the Gatorade. I know it's the Gatorade. This whole week's been crazy. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back possibly next week, but probably in 2 weeks. And I'm not sure. We've got 1 or 2 people lined up, so that's all I got. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks again.
You too. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Bye.